Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning. Welcome to Peace Fund Radio and the wonders of technology.
And the wonders of technology, coming to you in a very nice, warm, sunny studio in Los Angeles, California, and a nice wet and windy day in Budapest, Hungary.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this. However, I would say it would be nice to be on the show you're working on. It sounds like it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really very cool show, Strike Back, which is a Cinemax show, and Sky One in the UK. Great cast they have. It's been going. It's the fourth season. They said it's the last season, but there's inklings of other things happening because it does very well. I mean, they seem to have a very good... I've never been on a show where I've actually only shot second unit.
Really?
Because the second unit crew is as big as another first unit crew. It's hysterical. It's just it's a big production, very big production.
And what are you playing in it?
I play a French COS officer. COS is the military arm of the Swiss army. Mm-hmm. That's what I play. I say so. I have a French accent, and it is very nice to be French for a while, and I speak a little French, probably badly, but you know.
Well, it's all it's television magic, my friend. So I'm sure you're selling.
Isn't it just?
Yes.
Isn't it just?
And you said it was 4 degrees. You were shooting in 4-degree weather last night.
Yeah, well, this morning. Yesterday was hot, but there's a storm that came over the Atlantic that hit England. At least 4 people died in England because of it. And this storm seems to have affected the rest of Europe as well because it's storm clouds and freezing conditions in Budapest now. So, you know, I come back Friday, so there's no problem. No problem. And how have you been this week, sir?
Fantastic. We have a heat wave. I have been mentioning Peace Fund Games. I did 4 newspaper articles this week, and it only seemed appropriate to include what you got going on the 6th and 7th. So it's been busy but fun.
Yeah, we're still reeling from the poker event. It did very well, as I said. We have some numbers in now, so it looks like everything we promised was going to happen. And we're just getting final numbers, and our accounts department is doing all the final.
The final.
Do, it's like, you got to figure out make sure that this person's got this and the matching funds are in, etc., etc. But it seems that we've done well on that. So coming off of that, now we're well into Peace Fund Games, and we're getting our all our teams back online because we did move the date, which has and venue, of course. You can go to the Camp Pendleton Paintball Park is where we will be doing it, and all the information will be on there, and actually our new pricing structure, which is actually better and much more fun of an event than we even had before. So it's kind of it morphed into something that could be really very cool.
Well, I mean, there was never any doubt that it wouldn't be a fantastic event. There was just some logistical particulars that had to be ironed out, and now that they have been, it's free for everyone to unleash mayhem in Oceanside.
That is exactly what it's going to be. Mayhem. I see we have John Beerley around. Are you there, John?
John has.
I am. Good morning, gentlemen.
The wonders of modern technology.
Yes. Where are you again now, Adrian?
In Hungary.
In Hungary. Okay,
Budapest,
I can never keep up with you. How's everything over there?
As I just said, it's cold.
Yes.
But it's nice. I actually was also doing pre-production work on the film I'm hoping to shoot next year as a director. So we're just looking at funding right now. We're in some stages of funding, so we'll see how that develops for all our pictures, actually. So.
And how are you, Ethan? I haven't talked to you in forever either. It feels like.
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Good.
I'm not directing a film next year, but I do have a Christmas album, a 2-disc Christmas album featuring a director of a film next year out, Adrian Paul.
Very funny.
For good.
But this
Go ahead.
The fun thing is, Ethan, you do have, it is for homeless, and that's something what we're going to gear the show about, is the homeless children and youth in America, because your event which actually is December 6th, unfortunately that I can't be there, but does also help the homeless children in Valencia, California, is that right?
Yeah, North Hollywood, Valencia, Lancaster, that area. It helps. It's 3 homeless shelters, actually, that we do it for, and possibly a 4th this year, and the Shelter for Domestic Violence. So it's pretty wide. But it's all good.
Homeless is it is a big topic, and it's actually escalating into a crisis from what the data is showing me. It's difficult to obtain all the numbers, but because of the transitional and often invisible nature of the population, but more than 1.7 invisible children and youth can be found across America in every community. So what happens in early childhood can really matter for a lifetime.
Well, there's also that fringe of society, and I know that's not what today's show's about, that is still holding on and trying to improve their existence and kind of come back from it. Homelessness doesn't have to be permanent.
That is true. And I think, as long as people stay off, substances and things that take them astray, then they can come back. Otherwise, I think they go down a path that's very hard to come back from.
And I think a big part of that too is being willing, to not be afraid or ashamed to ask for help, because there are so many people and organizations out there that will help. And it's bad things happen, and hard times fall on people, and I just hope that people out there know that it's okay. It's okay to ask for help when you need it, because there are a lot of people who would very, very gladly give it.
Well, 1 in every 45 American kids goes to sleep without a home, and of his or her own every year. I mean, the recession basically led to a 50% increase in students identified as homeless in school districts throughout the country. So these numbers are not great. I mean, I've got some other numbers here which are kind of disturbing. 39% of the homeless population is young people under 18. At least 11% of American children living in poverty are homeless. About 75% of homeless teens that use drugs or alcohol as a means to self-medicate to deal with the traumatic experiences and abuse they face. Teens aged 12 to 17 are more likely to become homeless than adults. So these numbers, obviously, as I said before, as long as you can keep the kids off of that track, there's an easier way to come back. Otherwise, they go down a path which makes it a lot harder to come back from.
Yeah. Tragic.
The kids that you deal with, Ethan, are they? I mean, they don't have this. Do they have these issues in the shelters that you're dealing with?
I'm sure those issues exist someplace, although I actually haven't seen too much of it, because a lot of the kids and families that we deal with are pretty all-American in type, meaning they're usually still a family unit. They may have lost their home due to the mortgage crisis, or they may have lost some income, jobs being shipped overseas, and they've kind of had to combat those situations. And, us being in entertainment, nobody rolled the dice like us, and as far as we could have stepped left and been in the exact same situation if we didn't step right. So it's you find a lot of people very, very close to what we're like, and they mirror us in a lot of ways. People that have just had to combat a bad economy and have gotten the worst of it, and now need some vouchered housing for a while. I mean, there's people that have been laid off, and they thought they were going to find new work and never did. And quite frankly, let's be honest, most of the jobs are representative of a third world country out here. You cannot really find a good job. It's very challenging.
Well, you talked a little bit before regarding that you deal with a lot of homeless kids that live, on the streets,
right,
and that go to school. And, during the 2012-2013 school year, it was it was a record high of homeless students in the United States. Basically the public preschool and grades K-12 jumped 8% from the previous school year, and to hit 1.25 million children that registered for school and were actually homeless. So it does affect them. I mean, obviously, when you go to school, you have to have a stable background to really help you, go through school and learn. I mean, I think it's one of the hard things being homeless, I think, is to actually have that stability in your life.
Well, I'm amazed, actually, as you know, Adrian, because you've been to the shelter's headquarters and church with me several times. There is a school right across the street from it where many of the kids attend. And it's inspiring on one hand because they try to get an education, they try to lead a normal life. However, you know, I know, and every kid in school knows who the homeless kids are, and it's a tough stigma for some of these kids to overcome. Most of the kids we deal with at our Christmas event, for example, they're in school of some sort. They're in a school. They're trying to improve. So it's been a fascinating sort of social discovery, this event, over the last 4 years for us, and just to see how different parts of America live.
Yeah, I mean the thing about schooling for homeless children is that it's often interrupted and delayed, with homeless kids twice as likely to have a learning disability or to have to repeat a grade or to be suspended from school. So it really does affect their education. There's some number you actually mentioned a minute ago, which was, you talk about doing it in Valencia. Well, actually, California here represents 21% of the homeless students in the entire United States. 21%.
Wow.
California ranks 46th out of 50 in the number of homeless children. And the percentage of students who experience homelessness in California is twice the rate of the national average. You'd think California was the state of the land, of plenty, but obviously it doesn't exactly. Those numbers don't exactly ring that, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. That's the shocking reality of it all. And you're right. These children do have a lot of obstacles in addition to just the stigma of being homeless, and they're easily dissuaded, given logistics, to quit, or just psychology, to quit on school, which is unfortunate.
So what would you say? I mean, having dealt with homeless kids and stuff, what would you say? You see kids on the street. What do you do? I mean, do you give them food? Do you give them money? Do you give them help? What would be? How do you look at it?
Typically, we do food. We do food, and we'll do other sorts of assistance. Sometimes money, depending on what the visual situation is. But you've been to the shelter and you've been to the event with me, Adrian. You've seen it. I mean, most of these. It's funny because when I was a kid, the idea of I almost never saw homeless people, and when I did, it was like an anomaly, and you felt it was like the crazy Vietnam veteran who wanted to live in the woods. Now it's such a more normal section of society is battling it that it's very easy to walk down the street and get a dialogue going with someone who's homeless, and just realize that they're dependent on a shelter if they're lucky, or vouchered housing if they're lucky, or a food bank if they're lucky. And we've been to the food bank at the particular social service office we work with, and you and I have been there together. We were there with Aaron Fitzgerald one day, and it was empty, tragically empty. So food is probably the number one sort of situation. Food is the number one thing I generally give.
Well, it's actually interesting. Homeless kids are twice as likely to experience hunger as their non-homeless peers, and it really has a negative effect on their physical, social, emotional, and cognitive development. It's from here, looking at some of the numbers, more than 1/3 of homeless children have been forced to skip meals. 2/3 of homeless children worry they won't have enough to eat. So you're absolutely correct that this is one of the key things. And I've always said, a lot of the time in the cupboards that we have, our food, you call them pantries, we call them larders in England, but pantries, you've got stuff you don't have, tinned foods that you probably haven't used in a very long time, and to just drop it off at your local, shelter is probably a very good thing to do.
We've done several different things. We've set up a station on 6th and Gladys, and we will work all Saturday just doing essentially a farmer's market of cooking or tailgating, to feed people. But, the food is only the first step. We were actually, I think it was last year at our Christmas event, where we had a family, a mom and 3 children, and she had to decide each week, sometimes daily, daily she'd make the decision, let me clarify, which kid would eat and which would not. And that was every week. She was kind of figuring out who would be able to eat. And I can't imagine being able to tell one of my kids, you're not going to eat today, And that kind of, it's really hard for me to stomach it. I know people love to, when I go on a neo-political tirade, but it's hard for me to see people in $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 Hugo Boss suits at a podium telling us that we're the greatest country in the world, when I've got a mother in front of me who, if we did not bus her there to the event, she would not have anything for Christmas, and the rest of the year has to decide which kid would have to eat. That's kind of what you're faced with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, when you're dealing with that, the funny thing is that the kids that continually go hungry, they have poor health, behavioral and emotional problems, and difficulties in socializing with peers. But the interesting thing is that obesity among food insecure children is extremely common due to the low quality of food they're getting. And actually, one study says that if a family has experienced food insecurity at any point during a child's toddler years, the child is 3.4 times more likely to be obese by the time they're 4.5 years old.
Gosh, it's crazy.
I don't know. 4.5 years old, you're obese. The strain that does on the health system of the child must be quite damaging, because everything's forming in those, your bones and that really reform every 7 years. That's what your body regenerates. So you're forming your body for the next 7 years, and you're having that stress put on the heart, the liver, the pancreas, everything else because of that.
Yeah, that's a whole other batch of problems and circumstance that you're going to have to deal with. The problem, as you can tell just by this discussion, is much bigger than people realize.
Yeah, there's John. Do you have people in your area? Do you have homeless shelters? Do you have food banks, things of that nature?
Well, in the town where I live, the official 2013 census population is 161. It's not 161,000. That's 161 people. Period. I live in a very small town in southern Indiana where there's not. Not a homeless issue, but our community is extremely active, and it's something I'm very proud of. For a town that small, we have an incredibly booming community center. They have sports programs for kids. They have a library, and they have a food bank to make sure that families in the area who need food when they don't have it can have access to it. As far as a homeless issue, not really where I live now, which I live now where I grew up. For a while, I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and you would occasionally see homeless people around. But sometimes you just don't know a person's circumstances when you see it. There was a really heartbreaking situation that was actually got national news coverage just a few weeks ago, where there was a homeless family that spent a lot of time in an area that was about a 5-minute walk from where I lived when I lived in Louisville, and they had a 12-year-old son who had befriended another homeless man who was 20 years old. The 21-year-old had a history of criminal sexual abuse against children. The 12-year-old had, gone to a park, which is a park that I used to walk in all the time when I lived over there. And the 21-year-old followed him. They had a physical fight, and the 21-year-old stabbed the 12-year-old to death. And it's God. Just, and it's heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking. And you think that, if that family if someone had helped that family, or and again, you don't know what the circumstances in a situation that like that are, but those are the kinds of things that can happen, when children are in situations that are dangerous or they don't have a home, and it's just really a heartbreaking situation.
Well, actually, they basically say that there's a quarter of homeless children have witnessed violence, and 22% have been separated from their families. Mm-hmm. So it plays a significant role in children that are displaced, and this exposure can really cause a number of psychosocial difficulties. They're more likely than those who have not had to deal with that. They will exhibit frequent aggressive and antisocial behaviour, and they're fearful. There are high levels of depression, anxiety. It goes on. You're absolutely right. That cycle of violence is easy to get into when you have nothing.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other facts here I'd like to put in here. By age 12, 83% of homeless children have been exposed to at least one serious violent event. 83% by the time you're 12. That's a very big number. Almost 25% have witnessed acts of violence with their families. 15% have seen their mother their father hit their mother, and 11% have seen their mother abused by a male partner. So, we're dealing with a socio-economic factor here that really, will affect kids on the long term. And as we've discussed before on the show, when you deal with something of this nature, it creates a domino effect, and this violence begets violence as they get older, and they will be much more likely to be in institutions and dealing with drugs if they continue that life, and especially if they're exposed to that at a very young age.
Well, we actually had one of our Peace on Radio heroes of the week, Brittany Amano from Honolulu. She had experienced not only homelessness as a child, but an abusive family situation where her mother was abused. And she started not just one organization, but several. One called Hawaii's Future Isn't Hungry, and another called Teens Stopping Domestic Violence. She's also started advisory councils for teenagers, something called the Hawaii Meth Project to educate teenagers about the meth issues. And again, that's one of the things that I love so much about the show. All of the things that we've talked about today, these are they're very sobering numbers, they're very depressing numbers, but almost all of our heroes of the week, all of the charity organizations that are out there were started by someone who heard statistics like these and wanted to make a difference and wanted to make a change. So, even though it's difficult to talk about these things, and the numbers certainly are very, very troubling and painful to hear, getting that information out there is what inspires people to take action. And again, I think that's why I love the opportunity to be on the show and get the word about these kinds of issues out there.
Well, there's a couple of other charities that make a difference too. There's www.hearus.us. Hear Us. The mission is to give voice and visibility to homeless children and youth. They produces films and books that are used by educators, social service personnel, and other audiences to call attention to the invisible crisis of millions of families with children and young people who struggle without a place to call a home. So you can check them out on the web. We'll have the website address on our pages after the show, and another one is School on Wheels. That's www.schoolonwheels.org. Another charity navigator favorite, having a 4-star rating. Again, they are a non-profit founded in 1993, and it was started by a lady called Agnes Stevens. When she began tutoring homeless kids in a park in Santa Monica, basically trying to encourage them to stay in school and participate in school activities. Today, they've actually got hundreds of volunteers working one-on-one with kids who are homeless. These kids are, academic. They need an academic stability, and this is the kind of help they desperately need. So this is another very good organization that is really looking at the educational side of being homeless for kids that don't really have the opportunities that we do. Ethan, you obviously deal with. There are. I'll let you address this, but there are certain food banks and certain places that actually help homeless kids as well. Correct?
Yeah, there's several places. It depends. It's funny. It's a customized structure here in California, and it depends on the ages of the kids and what exactly the requirements are and what their situation is. And there's different places you can go for different amounts of aid. I just helped the school nurse at my daughter's elementary school because her neighbor lost her house, and her 2 kids and their mother were all living in a car now, and they were ages, they were 6th grade and 7th grade, and they were going to live in the car. They were going to try and maintain an existence that way until they could get help. But they don't always have. There's not always food in the food bank, and there's not always vouchered housing or a place for people to sleep. That's the reality. Is the problem is so big in so many ways that you can't always get the aid you're looking for.
Yeah, too true. That is an issue. John, let's talk about the hero of the week, because I want to hear the positive side of some of these things too. I know you have a hero this week that
absolutely. We have actually, I actually want to go back and talk about several of our former heroes, previous heroes of the week who have had homelessness as their issue, and just actually got some fresh statistics just in from Beverly Shahara, our operations officer. Some quick numbers about education among the homeless, that homeless children lack stability in their lives, with 97% having moved at least once a year. So once a year, 97% of homeless kids are end up in a different place. So obviously schooling is interrupted and delayed. Homeless children are twice as likely to have learning disabilities, to repeat a grade, to be suspended from school. According to the Education Department, 3/4 of these homeless students have doubled up, which means they're living with friends or extended family members. 16% live in shelters, 3% live without shelter, and about 6% are entirely unaccompanied, meaning that they live completely on their own, no parents, no other family members. And as the number of homeless students in America has risen in recent years, their scores on state assessment exams have decreased. Data for grades 3 through 12 shows 40% proficiency in reading, 44% proficiency in math. And again, these are the kinds of numbers that have inspired so many of our previous heroes of the week to take action. We had Katrine Kiersebom and Corinne Hines, who were 11 years old in 2011 when they discovered that the local ski resort had stacks upon stacks of coats, boots, gloves, and hats that had been left there in the lost and found. And after 30 days, if nobody claims it, the ski resort was like, well, we don't know what to do with this stuff. So the girls were like, we know what to do with it. And they've started a national movement to collect things from lost and founds and distribute it to the homeless. It's a fantastic organization. You can read about it at warm-winters.org. We had Brittany Amano, who I had mentioned earlier, of Hawaii's Future Isn't Hungry. Joshua Williams of joshua.heart.org. Joshua is 13 years old. He's raised more than 500,000 pounds of food, $250,000 in funds, 20,000 pounds of books, toys, and hygiene products for homeless children. Ariana Luderman from teamariana.org. Ariana is a runner, and she has raised all kinds of money through sponsorships for the homeless, and she does a lot of work with an organization called Vogel Alcove, VOGELALCOVE.org. And a few months ago, we had Karen Hughes, who was the president and CEO of Vogel Alcove, on Peace Fund Radio, and she talked about the homeless issue in Dallas and all of the work that her organization does to get these homeless families back on track and provide shelter and opportunities for the homeless children in the area. Another one was Nicholas Lowinger from the Gotta Have Soul Foundation, SOLE. His website is gottahavesoul.org. And Nicholas supplies shoes to homeless kids and homeless vets. And I'll never forget a conversation that I had with his mother, Lori, once. She was talking about, Nick was a little bit bummed out because he had a big fundraising event in town, and some of the adults in the community were grumbling about, well, he should have done it this way, he should have done it that way. And, I was thinking to myself, while these adults were complaining about the manner in which a teenager put shoes on the feet of homeless kids and homeless veterans, the teenager they were complaining about was putting shoes on the feet of homeless kids and homeless veterans. Give the guy a break. It's just amazing, what some of these kids are able to accomplish. And, as we've learned time and time again, they've had adults tell them no, they've had adults tell them that it won't work, and yet they still do it and they get it done. We had Rashini Premaratne from the Cross Out Homelessness campaign, in which she had students tape X's on their chests to bring attention to the homeless problem. Her website is xouthomelessness.wordpress.org. And also Hannah Taylor from the Ladybug Foundation. When Hannah was 5 years old, she saw a man eating out of a dumpster. It changed her life. She says, I have learned a lot about homelessness and poverty, and I have had the chance to teach people about homelessness. I have talked to thousands of people. I believe that if people know about homelessness, that there are people living without a home, they will want to help. That was when she was 5 years old. She's 17 years old now, and in that time she has raised $2 million to feed the homeless. Absolutely fantastic story, as all of our heroes of the week, including our brand new hero of the week for this week, a young man named Zach Bonner. Zach is awesome. Zach is 16 years old. He was born in Searcy, Arkansas. Now lives with his mother and his sister in Tampa, Florida. And he lost his father to a motorcycle accident. When Zach was 6 years old, he witnessed the devastation of Hurricane Charlie firsthand in his community. But rather than being overwhelmed by the numbers of people he saw who had been displaced by the hurricane, he chose to take that moment to leap into action. So Zach took his little red wagon and filled that little red wagon with the equivalent of 27 pickup trucks full of water, one wagon load at a time, to deliver water to families who'd lost their homes to the hurricane. A year later, at age 7, he officially founded the Little Red Wagon Foundation, which you can read about at lrwf.org. Now, from the beginning, Zach's focus was on helping homeless children, as he told a reporter named Michael Stutman from InspireMyKids.com. These kids don't have a home. They don't have a safe place to sleep at night. They're out on the streets not because they want to be, but because it's out of their control. So, again, he decided to take matters into his own hands in any way he could. In 2007, at age 9, he staged a fundraiser called My House to the White House, in which he walked 1,225 miles from Tampa to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., along the way raising $25,000 for homeless children, and even slept among the homeless kids in shelters in D.C. to learn more about their struggles, to learn more about what they needed. He used that knowledge to do something else pretty big and awesome. This is amazing. In 2010, when he was 12 years old, he started walking one day in Tampa and ended up in Los Angeles 178 days and 2,478 miles later, raising funds and awareness all along the way, meeting with homeless children, handing out gift cards. He averaged about 20 miles a day, no matter how hot or cold or rainy it was. And when he finally stepped onto a Santa Monica pier, to the cheers of hundreds of supporters, including someone you might know named Sir Elton John, who was waiting for him with a $50,000 check. Awesome. Nice. Zach greeted his supporters with the following speech, which is beautiful. There's an ancient Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Most people don't walk 1,000 miles or 2,500, but what it really means is that we all need to take that first step to get something big done. If I have helped one homeless child, I hope I have accomplished that. And certainly, Zach, you have accomplished a lot. He's had several other really cool fundraising events. One of them was called Zach in a Box, where he lived for 7 days in a plexiglass box near a mall, with plywood serving as the bottom of the box, pieces of cardboard, and a sleeping bag, to bring attention to how sometimes homeless people have to live, and raised all kinds of stacks and stacks of donated canned food items, all of which were donated to local charities. And he has also distributed something called Zach Packs, which are backpacks full of supplies, including snacks, toys, toiletries, educational supplies that are distributed across the nation to homeless children. To date, he has distributed over 10,000 of these Zach Packs. So, Zach Bonner, for your efforts to bring attention to homelessness, for the incredible feats that you have accomplished on behalf of the homeless, and for all of the tireless work you do to bring them a voice, to bring them shelter, to bring them food. You are our Peace Fund Radio hero of the week.
Yeah, you know what? I actually think I'm going to call him Forrest. I think I'm going to nickname him Because it sounds like something. I bet he saw Forrest Gump and went, "Oh, that's a good idea. I think I'm going to do that."
Oh, it's incredible! It's incredible. I mean, you can't imagine. I mean, literally walking at age 12, he became the youngest, the youngest person ever to walk from the East Coast to the West. He received the presidential 12, and that was after walking to Washington D.C. when he was 9. So, hey, that's incredible. In 2006, he received the Presidential Service Award from President Bush. He was honored as a point of light by Florida Governor Jeb Bush. He has met with President Bush. He's met with President Clinton. He's been on Good Morning America, Reader's Digest. Named one of 12 Huggable Heroes by the Build-A-Bear Workshop, which does all kinds of incredible things for kids. I could sit here and list the rest of his awards, but again, it would take about 5 hours. So that's a start. We don't have time, but yes, check out his efforts at lrwf.org.
Yeah, Zach, that's awesome, and I want to commend him to actually continue to do this, because the more people that get on a bandwagon to help others, the better we all will be at the end of the day. I think it's very important. I mean, you said something earlier, John, regarding homeless kids, and you said they move around a lot. Now, I know for a fact that when a kid kids rely on repetitive nature of their lives, so that they get to know that they go to school at a certain time, they wake up in a certain bed, their mom and dad are there, or their dad's there at a certain time, they eat at a certain time. All that type of stuff is a routine. When you rip part of that routine out, it creates a real psychological issue with them. I mean, I know when I go away, my kids are, they get a little bit more rambunctious because I'm not there. They want to know what's happening, why are things different. So you can imagine when your child is ripped away from the norm, even if it's living in a house or going to a certain school or an education on a constant basis, how traumatic that must be for a young child.
No, it's unbelievable. Yeah, and it's and plus, as you said earlier, there's that unfortunate stigma of other kids in school maybe bullying kids who are homeless. It's just such a cycle, and I think the more education and understanding we can have, the easier it's going to be to continue to solve the problem and bring relief and aid to those people who need it.
Well, Ethan, you dealt again. You're one on under the homelessness banner. You're our eyes and ears in a sense. Do these things sort of run true with the kids that you come across?
What things specifically were you talking about? Like John's statement about them being bullied?
Well, that's partly it, yes. I mean, but there are all the things such as hunger and such as, the fact of not being in one area. Does it impact on this social emotional skill set levels because they don't have a constant basis in their lives?
I'm sure it does to an extent. I think all of these things play a rather deadly part in the scenario. It's a cyclone of just low self-esteem and darkness. But I think there's some of these kids will actually inspire you and give you the impression that not all is lost. There are some people out there that are doing exactly what you'd predict. They are bullied. They become bullies themselves. They become a social nightmare. And then there's some that are actually quite moving. I mean, the whole purpose behind our event in December was to really give kids a chance to just feel normal and have a day where they felt like they mattered on some level. And that's what we really hope to do, and is sort of somehow give them a level playing field for a day, like have people come together and basically say metaphorically that, hey, you're important. You're important enough for all of us to get together and do this for you. And you have a chance. And I think I think some kids, they don't need that. Some of them are going on and trying to make a chance for themselves anyways. But it's it's interesting. We should have some on the show. We should go over to the shelter and do like a live show from there one day.
That's not
absolutely.
a bad idea, actually.
That's
not
a
a bad
great
idea. I mean, because I think we bring Kid Heroes of the Week that actually are used to certain issues that they are are in front of them, but to actually have them on the show to hear it firsthand, I think is very. It changes your life.
Yeah.
In fact, the funny thing, I mean, I'm deviating slightly, but talking about that, I've been to Thailand. I've seen, kids that are displaced. I've seen kids that don't have their mom and dad anymore because they got killed through a natural disaster. Or I've seen kids in a unit where they're helpless, and it really does impact your life when you see it firsthand. Mm-hmm. The people from Wellspring Hope, who we've just partnered with recently, had offered me to go to Niger, West Africa, and they said it will change your life because you really realise what you have or what they don't have as a basic human need. And these types of things, I think we have to be aware that these things are happening around us, especially homelessness in America, which is really not acceptable.
Well, it definitely triggers some passion. I'll tell you, if you see it firsthand and you can realize the human connection and sincerity there, you definitely become more motivated. In fact, from like September to the end to our event and through Christmas, I do a lot of apologizing because I'm a completely different person in terms of rallying support and getting people involved and getting people to events or to sign things for silent auctions or to bring in raffles, prizes, or support, food, things like that. And I do a lot of apologizing in life anyway, but I do a lot more apologizing towards the end of the year just because I know what's at stake, probably better than the average American who has not visited these places. You wouldn't even know this shelter was there if you just drove by it because it's on a church property and it's behind the church and you can't really see it. It's a small, rather insufficient building. Wouldn't you say, Adrian?
Yeah, pretty much. You wouldn't really notice it by driving past. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah. And I think that's a metaphor for the problem. Most people just drive right past it and don't see it or don't pay any respect to it,
Now, Ethan, speaking of our Heroes of the Week earlier, you happen to be the father of one of our Heroes of the Week, your daughter Sean, who has been very involved with, and learned a lot from you and Loda, who have been such a great example for her. And have you noticed that, the work that she's done, not only helping you with the Christmas breakfast and other, toy drives and fun drives that she has done herself? I mean, have you noticed that it's kind of changed the way she looks at the world? I mean, I know we hear stories all the time about how she's this incredible crusader for what's right.
Well, she's highly compassionate to begin with. I got to admit, this whole thing was her idea. We just put the logistics in place, but really she was the motivating force of it. I think what she likes to do is she's a big fan of equality. And whenever a kid is left out or whenever she knows someone's on hard times or, even at this breakfast itself, this Christmas event where one of the homeless kids may be sitting next to her, she always makes an extra effort to make sure that kid is included, which is a skill set that she probably gets from her mom, So she's always been that way. I mean, I'm very proud of her. And the honor of being the Hero of the Week was a big thing in our household, and she was really excited about it. But I don't think she grasps. She's like, why am I hero for this? She almost didn't get it. She was like, why am I, I remember when I brought her to the station, she's like, but we do this anyway. Why am I, so she's really been, a really good, example for me actually in terms of what's important because it's all simplified with the kids. I mean, I don't know if you can grasp that, John, or not. Don't take that the wrong way. But Adrian, you being a father as well, your kids kind of simplify life at times,
Yeah.
Well, they do totally. I mean, when you have your kids, their priorities definitely not yours. So, simplifying it is absolutely true. They do simplify things down because we find we make things so complex as we get older because we have the job to take care of and the house to take care of and your career to take care of and the family to take care of and then you've got to go and train and play and go out to the movies and go to events and it's so complicated. Whereas a kid, they don't have to deal with any of that. It's much more simple. It's a much cleaner, and that's why I love kids because it's so honest. They cry, they laugh. I mean, it can be changed in a minute, in a moment's notice. And I think it's very telling.
It can be. It's just I think that it's this strange sort of emotional addiction when you go through a situation where you help someone who sincerely needs the help and appreciates what you've done. You kind of feel the demand to do much more. All of a sudden you realize, it's like that moment in Schindler's List where he realizes he could have saved 12 more, even though he saved hundreds, It's like it comes down to logistically, like, gosh, now how do we double this? How do we triple? How do we get 10 wells? How do we,
that is so true. That is so true. But you have to start small somewhere.
Right.
And anybody that's listening to this that has an inkling to do that and go, well, I don't know how to start with it. There's a simple thing. As we discussed earlier in the show, one step forward at a time. And one small step allows you to start walking and then running.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that's really the basis of what I wanted to say.
There's a real.
And they will go ahead. Go ahead, Ethan.
No, I was going to say I didn't want to make too much of a statement, but there's a real cool message, an open letter from my daughter that starts the Christmas album we produced, 4 Social Services Off, which really talks about how our lives were redefined by the event itself. And how we went from looking at Christmas one way to now looking at Christmas and life a totally different way. The very first track on the album is her and my family kind of explaining what the cause is and what it's come to mean. And I think, throughout the album itself, right down to Adrian's outtakes, you can kind of get a sense of how things have improved for all of us actually through the charity work.
Well, there's an interesting a quote from Lori Bonner, who is, the mother of our hero of the week, Zach. Lori accompanied Zach on his walk. She's been there with him every step of the way. There was actually a movie called Little Red Wagon that was made, about Zach's efforts, and Lori was played by Anna Gunn, one of my favorite actresses, Anna Gunn from Breaking Bad. For the money that Zach was paid for the rights to his story, he turned around and gave every penny of it right back to the homeless community.
Yeah.
And Lori said that there have been times that she's worried about him, that she's worried that maybe he's kind of given up so much of his childhood to do this for others. But she says it just what kind of makes her okay is that this is what this is what he's supposed to do. And then it's I think that's just incredible, for a parent to see that, wow, he's giving up so much of his own childhood to make life so much better for other people who need it. And another great quote from Zach that I wanted to throw out there, he said, "I feel we should meet the basic needs, but take it a step further and meet their kid needs. I feel it's important for everyone to have the opportunity to just be a kid."
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree. It is very important for everybody to just be a kid. Well, we're again getting closer to that time to wrap the show up. What else do we have out there, John, at the moment that you want to bring us in the way of news? Is there anything else there?
Well, as always, you can follow the crew on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook and Twitter, Peace Fund Radio and The Peace Fund. Also on, Facebook and Twitter both. Follow Adrian at AdrianPaul1. Follow Ethan at Combat Radio to get news on Ethan's Friday show, Combat Radio, in which the biggest names in sports and film and entertainment come by to talk about the issues that matter to you. And, of course, thepeacefund.org. Check out all of the things we've got going on there, and of course, paintball is coming up quickly. Any updates there, Adrian, for the paintball tournament?
Yeah, we're just redoing the site to renovate some of the pricing on there, as well as some of the structures, so that people can see what the structure is going to be. It will be again a 2-day event. And it will be open to anybody, people that are not paintball aficionados, should I say, professionals, as well as people that have played a lot of paintball. There'll be fun games to play, not just in a regular paintball match, but there'll be different challenges that we'll have that will allow people to sort of go, well, let me just try this for a minute. You can also learn how to play paintball, to shoot a paintball gun. There'll be a trade show that we're putting together there. There's lots of stuff for kids. There's bouncies. There's a splat attack, which is a soft paintball for children from 6 years old upwards, as well as laser tag. So there's loads of stuff that we're putting out there, but we want to make sure we have it all on the site, and we'll have that up in the next week or week and a half or so that people can really see what we're all up to. And then our marketing push will go out there to get to people. And as well, the great thing is, if you've got a company out there, it's a great way to actually bring your company in for the Christmas party. Bring your employees there and, donate to a charity. Your Christmas party fees, so you could have a great time. You'll have great food, great entertainment, see some celebrities, play some paintball, and you're making a difference at the same time with your Christmas party. So that's another plus of having the game so close to the Christmas time in a great area such as Oceanside.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity.
Anyway, Ethan, I'm going to have to say thank you so much, because I know we're out of time now. I've been babbling a little bit too long. John, thank you for bringing all of that stuff to us today. Thank you to Bev for getting all this stuff done. I want to also thank all the people that attended the poker tournament, because you guys were awesome. We raised a lot of money for that. And thank you for such a good show. I will finish it with a quote from Zach Bonner. Kids are never too young to make a difference. You are never too old or too young to make a difference. Don't let anyone stand in your way. Find something you are passionate about and just do it. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you soon.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.